I was optimistic when it was announced that Rebellion would make another Aliens vs Predator game. Despite the shortcomings of the 2000 game, its fast pace was something I remembered fondly. So when the multiplayer beta was launched, I got into it and it quickly deflated my expectations. I remember writing my thoughts in detail on a forum I used to spend my time on, and I'd have really loved to read them while preparing for this video. But unfortunately, not everything on the internet lasts forever, so those walls of text will be forever lost in time. But who knows, what if my memories made me treat the game too harshly? Now that's what we call a hook, eh? Also, it's an excellent excuse to pull another out-of-context snippet of Rebellion's CEO Medieval History channel. Wait, your CEO has a yacht and spends his money on hookers and coke? Nah, my CEO has a medieval armor suit, goes on reenactment fairs and has vast estates in which he rides his horses. You know, like a stereotypical gaming company CEO, right? The deal's the same as you'd expect. You get to play 3 separate single-player campaigns as a Marine, a Predator and an Alien. What's different is that, unlike Rebellion's previous AVP, this has all 3 playable characters roam around the same areas at roughly the same time. While there won't be any moments where they will interact as in Monolith's game, you'll nevertheless be able to pinpoint the order in which each character visited a particular level. It's a pretty neat feature for what is in the end a fairly generic story with no remarkable features or characters. Well, and Yutani is up to their usual shenanigans and toy with things beyond their control. In this case, they discover a sacred predator temple and attempt to research the items found there while simultaneously performing experiments on a captured xenomorph hive. The predators, alerted by the signal generated by the temple's activation, arrive on the scene to figure out what's happening. The colonial marines also arrive at the behest of the planet's colonists, who face a massive xenomorph infestation from the company's labs. And that's kind of all there is to it. Okay, Lance Henriksen reprises his role as Carl Bishop Weyland and is the main antagonist. But he's not as interesting as Rykov or Eisenberg were, for instance. It's a bit of a waste of talent to have a voice actor like him and just use his skills to deliver menacing monologues over and over again. Playing as the Marine, your arrival on the planet doesn't go as planned, what a surprise. The flagship that brought you there gets blown up by the Predator's mothership, and the rest of your squad must contend with a rough landing on board of the remaining shuttle. Since they get separated, the rookie you play as needs to make his way and help out his squad. It doesn't take long until multiple issues become apparent and cannot be shaken off. Firstly, the FOV is very narrow. This in itself isn't that much of a problem, but coupled with things like the slow walking speed, inability to carry more than 2 weapons, and a sprinting distance worthy of an asthmatic, it leaves the impression of a console shooter, more specifically a late 2000s console shooter, something like Modern Warfare 2, the one from 2008 and not this one. Oh god damn it, Activision. It certainly didn't age gracefully. And to make matters worse, you end up in your first combat situation against the aliens and... oh boy, where do I start? First of all, they move extremely slow. No, this is not a hyperbole, they are crawling towards your direction. In Monolith's AVP 2, they were at least running and jumping, but here they seem bored and uninterested. It certainly doesn't help that their pathfinding AI is atrocious. They constantly get stuck, walk in circles or jump sideways between walls. This all means that they're easy pickings, right? Absolutely wrong, because Rebellion decided to make the xenomorphs a bit resilient and the pulse rifle very inaccurate, almost as a way to compensate for the terrible AI. Combine all this and this is not fun at all. Okay, it is fun because some of the set pieces are interesting and the levels are really dark to the point where aliens are very hard to spot, perfect for an alien game, but in the later stages of the campaign, when more and more aliens come your way, the shooting makes the whole experience feel like a drag. There's a temptation to argue that the campaign may be interpreted as a horror game, and it has some merits, but the large number of aliens you face solidifies the idea that this was meant to be a shooter all along. You get access to a smart gun which makes things better, and I have to say that I really like the HUD when you handle it. But the best saving grace is the sniper rifle, a hip-fire murder machine. You can clear out a bunch of xenomorphs with this bad boy and its 6-bullet magazine. Who cares if it takes long time to reload? It's not like the aliens are fast anyway. Who said that playing hundreds of hours of Hunt Showdown was a waste of time, There's of course the mandatory Predator fight, and at least it's better than Rebellion's previous attempt. The bad AI makes this encounter lack any tension, and hip-firing the sniper rifle works wonders in whittling down its health. I had a more challenging time fighting the Praetorian, mainly because you're trapped in a tight space with it, and it insta-kills you the moment it gets close. The same goes for the final battle against Bishop, who I managed to beat playing like this. Last but not least, the combat droids create the least fun moments of the entire campaign. They're extremely bullet spongy and can quickly kill you. Therefore, the only viable way to defeat them is to grab the sniper rifle and shoot at their legs from far away. I complained about the xenomorphs being slow, but even they don't kill the campaign pace as these knee-capping sections do. I can't find words to define how lackluster these fights are. Unfortunately, the same description can be attributed to the campaign's overall design. All levels are linear and involve a series of go from point A, pull a lever or press a button and proceed to point B in a manner that's as unimaginative as it sounds. It doesn't help that you're fed these objectives in a way that's taken straight out of Call of Duty's campaigns. They should have named the protagonist Ramirez and be done with it. At every step of the way, you're being fed orders on the radio that essentially hold your hands from one objective to the next. I don't think it needs to be said, but this campaign was mediocre and didn't leave me a good impression, unfortunately. It's a shame because the shooting is somewhat enjoyable when it works and the campaign's ending is very fitting for an Alien franchise. The Predator's campaign starts around the same time as the Marines. After blowing up the flagship and landing on the planet, you have to discover the fate of your fallen brethren and untangle the mysteries of the ancient temple. Once you start killing some poor Marines in the planet's jungle, it becomes clear that good and not so good design choices have been made. First, the Predator's way of navigating the environment has been quite altered. Instead of being able to manually jump at extended heights and distances, now you have to use this pointer to designate the position where you want to get to. This is more restrictive since it limits the places you can access, but on the other hand, the resulting jumps are closer to what they can pull off in the movies. I love the flexibility of AVP-2's super jumps offered, but in that case it only affected the height and it was awkward to use outside of platforming. Here you can jump at great lengths and it works rather conveniently after you get used to the limits of the feature. They're also helpful in combat situations, allowing you to quickly reposition or escape some hairy situations with what's otherwise a lumbering character. Though I suspect this feature exists to accommodate players using a gamepad on consoles and not for any of the reasons I mentioned before. Oh well. When it comes to making you feel like a predator on the hunt, the game makes a so-so effort. I say this because it employs a distraction mechanic which lets you pick where you want to send a marine and promptly execute him. It's a bit gamey, but considering the AI is as bad as it is, I'm happy this feature works as intended. Unfortunately, when you start facing the aliens, things aren't as lovely. The melee combat is more functional, but it's a bit awkward. Instead of being swarmed by aliens, you engage in something that looks like a fist fight between you and another opponent at a time. You've got blocks, counterattacks, finishing moves. These aliens are supposed to be ravenous beasts, not martial artists straight off Mortal Kombat. It's also hard to see them properly since you can't even use a special vision mode suited for detecting xenomorphs for most of the game. Thus, melee combat is often a case of random mouse clicks hoping your hits won't be blocked or sending you into stun locks. And since I mentioned the executions, while they're cool and nicely animated, they lock you in position and leave you open for being attacked. I have a particular dislike for animations that take control from the player, and until Doom 2016 many fell prey to this design trap unfortunately. Your arsenal at the start of the game doesn't help much either. The shoulder cannon is powerful but often misses and quickly saps your energy. Thankfully, you eventually get your hands on disc and combi sticks which don't consume energy or ammo and are pretty effective in dealing with xenomorphs. Unfortunately, it also makes the latter parts of the campaign utterly unchallenging since you can now massacre waves upon waves of aliens with little worry for your safety. Being able to continuously dance in a room packed with aliens without taking any damage should not be possible, yet it totally is. Last but not least, I should mention the energy and healing economy, which is the best improvement over the other two AVPs I covered. In the 2000 version, you had to either pick up energy cells randomly scattered throughout the levels, or slowly wait for it to recharge as healing required most of your battery. In Monolith's version, you had a portable recharger that allowed you to top it up whenever you wanted, thus making the Predator completely overpowered since you had maximum health and energy at all times outside of combat. And in both games you were always starved for energy since cloaking consumed most of it. So what did Rebellion do to improve this? Simple, they made healing sticks a consumable pickup, cloaking to not consume energy at all, and integrated the recharge batteries in a way that fits the environment and the objectives at the same time. Sometimes you have to disable a security system, open a door or turn down some sort of generator to progress further. In all instances, that involves draining a battery of its energy, which incidentally is also the only way you can recharge your energy. And since it's only used to fire the shoulder cannon or use the proximity mines, power's not much of a factor. I get it, it's a simplified mechanic, but in the past games it was an unenjoyable and gamey chore. What is gamey this time around though is the final Predalien boss, with stages with fewer and fewer platforms you can walk on. I've seen worse final bosses for Predator campaigns, so I'm not going to say anything more about this. Last but not least, the Alien campaign puts you in the skin of a xenomorph experimented on by Weyland-Yutani. Obviously you break out and cause a lot of mayhem, and like always there's no profound story to consider here. What am I gonna do, describe each power generator I'm shutting down? Therefore, how does the gameplay hold up? It's not bad, I have to say. Sure, nothing can top Monolith's introduction to the Alien campaign, but here Rebellion makes no attempt unfortunately. But what I can say good things about is the implementation of stealth. Not only your cursor indicates whether or not you're hidden in the dark, but you can break lights to make things easier for you. Therefore, most of the time will be spent sneaking behind unsuspecting Marines and executing them one by one. Admittedly, it's not something hard to do considering the AI, but still. But I have to yet again complain about the executions, not just because they lock you in an animation. The game keeps the mechanic of healing yourself if you consume your victim's head. Yet, for some reason, executions that end up with an eaten head don't heal you. It's particularly annoying because when you do this in combat, it can completely screw you over. The benefit of getting some health back for the hassle would have been very welcome. It's what Doom 2016 did right after all. If you're gonna get close to an opponent, you might as well get rewarded for it. But I won't complain much because you are very vulnerable here, unlike in the other campaigns. Even a single Marine can kill you with just a pulse rifle when given a chance, so you need to think about how you approach groups of enemies. The same vulnerability manifests in the final arena when you take on 3 Predators, but for different reasons. I complained about the melee combat as a Predator, but from the other side it's even more awkwardly implemented. The only way I could adequately fight without being instantly stun-locked and killed was to pounce, land a heavy attack and back away repeatedly. Any attempt to attack head-on was met by a quick demise and reload on my side. I can't say I'm pleased about that, but at least this made the Predators dangerous. Otherwise, their shoulder cannons were utterly harmless and the AI is, you guessed it, not good. Movement-wise, the Alien is quite decent. Despite what the other campaigns left to be understood, the alien does have a sprint button that allows him to go very fast. At the same time, it's straightforward to jump and attach to a surface. Much more streamlined than what past games were able to achieve, that's for sure. But it's not perfect because it's not rare that you get stuck and can't transition between two surfaces even though you should be able to. This is one reason why the Predator fight was awkward, since there are so many more things I could have done to them had wall climbing cooperated with my silly attempts to make things work. Overall, it's an okay campaign, but by far the shortest between the three. That being said, it seemed to be the most polished design with fewer missteps than the Predators and certainly much better than the Marines campaign. It's just a shame it's over so fast, mainly since there's no other content to enjoy in 2022. The multiplayer servers are empty for one, and I have a feeling it might have been a decent experience in the day. Still, my memories from the beta all these years ago were mainly about how awkward balance was and the annoying press E to execute mechanic, which presented the same problems I mentioned earlier. There's also a single player survival where you can play as a marine facing waves of aliens. They're a decent experience since the layout of the two maps is friendly with the AI pathfinding, thus they perform as well as they can, given what's under their hood. But it's not a game mode I'm especially a fan of either. I'm mostly mentioning this because you can get more maps for multiplayer and survival by buying 2 DLCs. For a game with empty servers, it's bullshit regardless of the price, nevertheless the $12 they ask for. In conclusion, I have to admit that I remembered this game in a worse light than what I've experienced replaying it. I still think it's a big sin to make the overall gameplay so sluggish, and the AI is even worse than it was in the 2000 AVP. That being said, the campaigns were a tad more fleshed out and connected. In particular, the Predator and the Alien offered a decent experience. Do I think this is the best Alien vs Predator game? Certainly not. Monolith's creation has a far better single player campaign from start to finish, but Aliens vs Predator 2010 is an improvement over Rebellion's previous attempt. I have to make an observation that both games are products of their time. The first one appeared during the age of fast-paced arena shooters, so it too had the same crazy movement and bunny hopping mechanics. On the other hand, this one came out when all shooters attempted to emulate Call of Duty. While it kept away from the over-the-top story, to its credit, the movement clearly inherited from this approach. Makes me wonder though, if Rebellion would try to emulate the modern-day hardcore shooters if they had another AVP title in the present day. All speculations aside, thank you very much for watching. For the time being, this is my last foray into Alien games. I have no intention in covering Colonial Marines because I'm not a masochist, thank you very much. Press the fancy buttons to like and subscribe and share this video with your like-minded fellows. And until next time, cheers!